Well, welcome to Let's Talk Motorsport, episode number 7. And here we are. We spoke this time of the year and we thought we'd be talking about all things motorsport. There should have been MotoGP, there should have been World Superbikes, there should have been Formula One, there should have been touring cars, there should have been motocross, there should have been go-karts, there should have been everything in the motorsport world. But alas, the world is in basic lockdown. And as you can see here, we're practicing social distancing. And I'm in the studio by myself, which is probably an excuse for people not to turn up and sit with us, but here we are. And in light of that, this week we're going to get a bit serious because for the next few months, who knows how long this is going to hold on. But we're all crying out for it. We're champing at the bit to trying to get some motor racing in any form, any category whatsoever. But alas, that isn't to be. So tonight, in a special, I think a pretty special thing where we can have a bit of a chat and a discussion about the state of play in Australia and around the world for that matter. I'm going to welcome the CEO of Motorcycling Australia, Peter Doyle, and also a man that's been promoting the Motocross Championships, MX Nationals for, I don't know, over 20 years, Kevin Williams. They're distance, they're sitting at home and the likes of modern technology that we can sit here and talk about things. But thanks, guys, for joining us tonight in what is a rather dire circumstance. Hey, thanks, Peter. Thanks, Kev.
Yeah, thanks, Braxy. It is what it is.
Yeah, well, now first up to you, Peter, is with all this lockdown laws and everything, is motorcycling in Australia working as normal?
No, not really, Braxy. It's been a pretty busy period. We've obviously, as you've seen, all the events up until the end of May are essentially being postponed or cancelled. So the office has been, it's been pretty hectic at the office trying to, first of all, get all those postponed, try and find new dates, try and keep up with the government updates. So it's probably been one of the busier periods, despite the fact that we haven't been racing.
Yeah, well, at this time we were supposed to be on our way to Wakefield Park for the second round of the My Bike Motorcycle Insurance Australian Superbike Championship. And you guys, I'll take your hat off to you because you were hanging in there till the last moment. And it wasn't just the fact of what the new lockdown laws were, the 500 people in a group and all that. It was a lot more to that. So can you please explain to people the main reasons that we're not going ahead with Wakefield Park? We can get onto the bend in Western Australia with the V8s later, but there's it goes a lot deeper than just having people in close proximity.
Yeah, look, it was, first of all, the 500 people gathering limits that were imposed. We probably could have got through Wakefield Park, but everybody would have had to make some sacrifices there to be able to, get the paddock area and the mechanics and the staff and the officials and the riders to get them all in there and run the race. So we worked on a plan to get that in place, and we were confident we could have made that happen. But every discipline in our sport is very different. So road racing, for example, is typically a 3-day event. Sometimes 2, but typically 3. And at this level, we have to have a fairly high level of medical care and medical resources. And it got to the stage where it was almost impossible to guarantee the medical resources required, as most of them have been seconded to use in the community. So that was a major factor in postponing that event. Yeah,
well, you can't have an event without medical staff. And going over to you, Kev Williams, you made the announcement even before the postponement of the Wakefield Park Superbike round with your first round that was due to be done and dusted as well.
Yeah, look, I think there was a number of factors behind that. We partnered with the FIM Oceania, and we were planning to bring in some international riders for the junior program. And obviously with all what was going on, Peter and I had been chatting about this right back as early as World Superbikes. It was on the radar then. And for us, the same scenario. When you go to some of these regional areas that we go to, the capacity in the hospitals are very small, a large number of factors. And, we knew that as this came on, it was going to get tougher. So we made the decision early. And MX Nationals, you've got 4 classes. with mechanics and track marshals and everybody else, we wouldn't have got under 500 people, with 4 people, 140 riders, 4 people, we had 480 odd people plus 60 or 70 marshals and medical. It just wasn't there. And when you go to some of these small community towns with their fear that they already had, we were conscious that we didn't want them to be thinking, is this sport bringing a virus to our town? So we made the decision early. We want to make sure that people were well informed and could save money.
Now, you've been, I think over 20 years have been a promoter of AMX Nationals. You've renamed it in that time. But as a promoter, what does it mean to you? Because you've gone out on a limb, and a lot of people think, a promoter, they've got millions of dollars, they can feed it, which we know is a fallacy. Anybody that's done any promotion knows that the hand is in the pocket all the time. Now, you've got sponsors to furnish, you've got to keep them happy, you've got to keep your riders happy. What have you been doing to try and, I know everything's out of our hands, but there's a lot of things that I suppose you've been doing to try and appease things and just trying to keep the road as smooth as possible, even though there's a lot of potholes in it at the moment.
Yeah, look, it's about staying relevant. We need to be relevant at the moment. One of the tools that I love on Monday and hate on Tuesday is social media. But, we need to stay relevant at the moment. We have the ability to stay relevant, via social media. Up until this weekend, you're still able to go to ride parks. Clubs were still able to run club day. So we were encouraging riders to go out to their local club, be a volunteer again, get back to your grassroots, go and participate in the sport, go and train, improve everything that you're doing to get out there. We've spoken with our sponsors. At the moment, they're all fully committed because it is our intention with our partners, MA, to use our very best endeavours to still get a 9-round championship in before the end of the year. We were hoping to make a formal announcement today of what that might look like. We've seen, the AFL hoping to be back, in May and different dates. We've elected, in discussions with Motorcycling Australia, to hold off until the state government gives us their update, which I think, Peter, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think is due about the 14th of April, and that's with mass gatherings. A mass gathering now can't be any more than, your immediate family. So it's tight times. There's no sense us setting a calendar right now that's going to get 5 or 6 changes. We've spoken to our partners, we've spoken with the councils, we've spoken with Motorcycling Australia. We have a window of opportunity to the end of September to try and get the MX Nationals in, and that's where we're heading. That's what we want to achieve. Supercross will have its own parameters to move. So we're also working with, AME and the Supercross guys about what the calendar looks like. So, but we're not going to come out and announce a calendar and then have 5 updates. We're going to sit back. We need to be proactive, support the government, support what's going on, and then we'll make the call.
And PD, what about your angle that from an overall thing? Because MA not only looking after the superbikes, you've got the enduros, you've got heaps of the junior motocross. There's heaps of different things that you've got, your branches of MA are looking after at the moment.
Yeah, look, we're working with everyone, and every discipline's unique. So Speedway has its own issues. It's based on crowd participation, limited amount of riders. You've got enduro where you're out in the bush, and you've got to work with councils. So you've got motocross, which has typically got quite a large following. Road racing, which has an extended period where you've got to hold the event. Dirt track similar to Speedway, you've got trials, juniors. So there's so many disciplines and there's so many factors in trying to get or stay compliant with the guidelines that we've been given and try and hold these activities. But right now it's got to a point where we can't hold any of them. So, but as Kevin said, we're going to use our best endeavours, and it is our intention to cancel the least amount of races that we can. All the ones that have been postponed, we're under negotiations now to try and get those back on the calendar. If we can get back in line in June, if the government start relaxing the restrictions, it's going to be a pretty crowded second part of the year. So anybody who's having a bit of a rest at the moment, well, they're not going to get one in the second part of the year when it gets going. but that brings its own problems. You know, with all those disciplines and events, trying to get and reschedule and have events where they're not clashing in the same state, trying to get access to venues. You know, the V8s are trying, or the supercars are trying to do the same. They're trying to reschedule their events. The Shannon's National. So all these events for the road courses are trying to reschedule, and there's only going to be a limited amount of dates and a limited amount of racetracks that we're going to be able to access between the relaxation of any restrictions, if and when they come, and the end of the year.
Now, just before I ask another question, the people out there watching, please, if you've got any comments or questions to Kev or Pete, please send them in. Things I might have overlooked or in trying to get coverage of everything missed. But please, into comments and questions, there you go. It's up on the screen now. But Peter, with all that as well, to keep, riders have got to keep fit, and Kev, you can come into this as well. To try and find places to ride, because that's the basic thing. You need track time, whether it's dirt or bitumen. What's your advice to riders? And are you getting any feedback from any guys there about what's going on?
Look, I think at the moment it's going to be very, very difficult. There's a few guys that will have their own property, but, you know, we've heard certainly here in Victoria that, you know, don't go to friends' houses, stay at home. You know, the clear message. I think one thing I'd like to throw in right now is everyone's going to be on the same playing field. There's not going to be a lot of opportunity to go riding. There's certainly not road race tracks you're going to be able to go and hire, because no one's going to hire one on their own, because you're still going to need 30 or 40 people just at a dry hire to break up and go. So I think from that point of view, one of the things that's ultimately important is we have, whether it's road, whether it's speedway, whether it's enduro, motocross, supercross, whatever it is, we have a great social following. We get to a lot of young people. It's our turn to set an example. It's our turn to have our athletes be great citizens in humanity right now, because we can influence what people do, and we need to work out how they make things work. So from my point of view, you know, we need to be sending clear messages. You'll see up behind me, I've got BRAP. We've always, you know, BRAP, hold the throttle on. Well, you know, to me, BRAP right now, motorcycle sport can send a message to the whole world about getting onto it. Use the BRAP principle to save racing. BRAP, be responsible and always adhere to advice, please. Just use the BRAP principle and we'll be back on the racetrack soon. Let's use our position as athletes, as sponsors, as partners who have a great social following to support the message, support it, lock it down, do your training indoors, and let's get ready to go racing.
Well, that's a great thing. We'll have to write that BRAP down, actually, Kev. That's a pretty good one. Be responsible always, and I'll have to get the rest of it off you later. But
be responsible always, adhere to advice, please.
Excellent words of wisdom from the promoter. Now, PD, with what you're saying about the tracks, if we get the best case scenario is, I suppose, is Morgan Park in August for the round there. Before I get to that bit, it's bitterly disappointing for MA, for the V8 supercars, and for particularly the people of Western Australia, with Barbagallo racetrack being off limits to bikes and motorsport for a while. Now that it's back there, is that completely gone for the year? Because I'm sure V8 supercars will be trying to go back there. Are you still working on the back with V8 supercars to try and keep that 2+4 meeting alive? Because it's great for exposure. It's probably more prudent now to get the word out after this dilemma, whatever you want to, crisis, whatever you want to call it, is abated, that we get back on track. Is there ways, I know it's up on the website, cancelled, but is there a chance that you're working with the guys there that we may see motorcycle racing go back to WA this year, or is it it's off the table completely?
No, it's not off the table completely. It's just that under the criteria that we were going to go there was on the back of the bend in South Australia. So, you know, you're about a quarter or a third of the way to Perth already, and the following weekend, which we used to do traditionally back in the day, head over to Perth from there. There's a bit of a cost saving by doing those back to back. With the supercars, not postponing that event at Barbagallo, We don't know when their schedule is going to come out, but absolutely, I spoke to Shane Howard recently, where as soon as they have updated information on their events, we'll recommence discussions and see whether we can get that 2+4 going, which it's something we've worked on for a couple of years. It's something that Motorcycling Australia want to do, and it's something that supercars want to do. So we'll absolutely continue to work together on it for this year to see if we can make it happen. If we can't, then we'll push on into next year and try and make it happen again.
All right, now just getting into the final 6 months, Kev, you're pretty well sorted with tracks. You've got your motocross tracks and dedicated motocross tracks. But Peter, with road racing tracks or bitumen tracks for all disciplines of motorsport, you're going to try and, or not only you, but everybody involved, if this gets back up and running, you're going to be trying to put a year into maybe 4 or 5 months before Christmas and everything. So where does the pecking order for track bargaining? I'm sure that other tracks have already got booked after that event, and hopefully we are back on track by then. But will there be a chance that you might have to run a race during the week? I know it's all people taking away from work and everything, but does that come into the equation as well? Because there's only so many weekends that you can actually race at.
Look, everything's on the table. But, the track operators that we're working with, they've been very understanding. They've been very good. We have a good relationship with them all. We're looking at, obviously still the Bend is under discussion of whether we can get that event on towards the end of the year, where Morgan Park's obviously still scheduled in the calendar. Winton, Wakefield, we're working with Wakefield now to try and find an alternative date to see if we can get back there. So we're going to try and run as many of the events that we've currently postponed as we can, as long as we can get a calendar in place that will work with everybody and not put too much strain on the teams in a short period.
All right, well, let's go and have a drink of water or whatever beforehand. I'd like to keep you guys hanging around. We'll change the subject a bit. We'll go back a little bit back in time to the Ireland Classic, when one of our visiting overseas riders, Canadian Jordin Szoke, who's won, I think it was 18 Canadian Superbike Championships, a few Supersport Championships. He made his trek out here for the first time for the Ireland Classic. So let's lighten the mood a bit and have a chat to Jordin. All right, Jordin Szoke, multiple Canadian Superbike champion. Welcome to Australia. It must be a bit different to being here to where you were used to at the moment.
Yeah, we're under snow, so it's beautiful summer here. It's nice to get out of the winter and come over here. I've worked with a lot of Australians in racing over my career.
We'll get onto that.
Yeah. So it's super cool to be here. It's a beautiful place. I've never been to Australia, been all around the world, but not here. It's just amazing. I tease some of my friends that live here that I was staying with, like the birds you guys have are extraordinary. All the parrots everywhere.
Oh, those birds.
Yeah. No, you think they're annoying. I think they're pretty. But
no, I love the bird. I like the cockatoos and stuff.
Yeah, it's so cool to see all that. And so I spent some time traveling down the coast and golfing over across the bay here in Flinders and just working around and checking it out. It's beautiful.
So what convinced you to get down here? Have you been taking notice of the Ireland Classic over the last few years?
So a longtime engine builder of mine who worked with a lot of the AMA guys and mentored a lot of the guys. I think Yuji worked with Scott as well, who's now on the HRC MotoGP team. He's always talked about this race, and so I've always known about it through him. It's one of his desires, and he's slowly building a bike to come here. So he was a bit chapped when I told him I was coming this year. And, just the frames for our motorcycles are built actually in Canada. So I was very familiar with the whole American team. And I know everybody on the team. I know all the riders and crew. We're all friends from the racing days in the U.S. And so it was just a nice fit, and they approached me and said, hey, you ever think about doing this? And I'm like, hell yeah. who wouldn't want to ride at Phillip Island?
It is the best. And you've been out, you've had one steer in the dry, have you?
Yeah, finally I went into another class just to get some extra time to see where I was going, and there was only one little damp spot left out there. It's dried up pretty quickly.
Now, getting onto these old dungers, compared to what you used to racing in Superbike Championships, mindset, frame of mind, have you had to recalibrate yourself?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I'm lucky though. Like I'm old in motorcycle years, and I raced for Ferracci Ducati. I raced for Harley when they had the VR1000. I raced Suzuki's, Hondas, Kawasaki's. I've been BMWs. I've been on everything. And when I was a kid, I grew up riding CB450s, Sound of Singles. So I have a lot of experience to draw on, and so it just felt like going back in time in my head. But with modern tires, it's so cool to ride one of these bikes tricked out with the modern tires that we're used to, and they're just unbelievable stable. How stable! I was impressed down the front straightaway. I thought with the wind, super stable machine. Yeah, they're really fun.
So tell us a bit about what's been done to your bike and what it is.
So it's a FJ 1300 engine and the custom frame. Like I said, the Canadian builder is about 2 hours from my house who builds these. And then John from Oleans, who's my crew chief in Canada and head of Oleans for the Yamaha team in the US, he's here with us. So the suspension we're all very familiar with. And, the Dunlop, we can't thank Dunlop enough. They're bringing all the tires here for us. And Tony's here working on Josh's bike. And it's all tire compounds that we're currently racing with. So it just makes that transition really easy.
Now, a bit about yourself with the superbikes. You're probably the journeyman of both American and Canadian racing, and I know there's nothing that can replace the thrill of what's been on a start line, before the start. It's things like that keep you going?
It's funny because as you get older, you don't lose the love for racing, but you get tired a bit of the pressure to perform. So for me to come here where there's not much pressure besides, we want to do well, but it's a fun event. That's what really excites you, is just actually being on the motorcycle. All the bull before it, and leading up to it. It's when you put your helmet on. I find that the easiest part of the job. I love interacting with the fans and the kids, but when you put your helmet on, it seems so simple, and I think that's what's kept me going, the love for it. Because as soon as I go home from here, I'll be ice riding next weekend, and then the weekend after that, I'm in Quebec City doing a trials demonstration because I ride trials motorcycles as well. And so I'm every weekend I'm on a different bike, I'm on something else, and I just love to be on my bike.
Tell us a bit about the ice racing. Is it the speedway sort, or is it something else?
Yeah, so in North America we have flat track, and a lot of times in Australia or Europe you have more of the speedway bikes. And when I grew up ice racing, it was the oval and on a spike bike, and then I went to the studs, which is the head of the screw, not the pointy end, but the top end, and they actually sharpen those. And now I'm riding only road course. So full on is big. Sometimes we have road courses that are 2 or 3 miles long. Sometimes we have them shorter, depending on the ice. And I go out there, I'm usually the guy that makes them because all my experience riding tracks, they want me to lay it out. And it is so much fun, and it's such good training for the road racing because it sticks, but it still slides. And then if you do push it and fall, usually you just slide and you don't get hurt unless the studs hit you. So you can really push your limits. If you push your limits on one of these, it's expensive when it crashes and you hurt yourself. So that's been a great training tool for us. And everybody thinks, oh, cold, but anytime you're on a motorcycle and you're pushing, you don't get cold.
The adrenaline, everything kicks in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, with you're one of the, like I said, you're one of the elder statesmen. You could really empathise with someone like Valentino Rossi. He's had a lot of critics over the last couple of years saying you're too old, give it up, and all the rest of it. But I think you hit a nail on the head by saying what keeps you going. But he's exactly the same, isn't he?
Well, let's be honest. He's deserved the position he's in, right? Like whether he wants to ride or not should be up to him, not necessarily how well he's performing. He's still competitive. Obviously, Yamaha has been struggling with all their riders in race pace with the speed of the bike. So if you look at it, like, it's just qualifying, but he's never been a great qualifier. But I'll tell you one thing, in Canada, at our races, if MotoGP's on, people are sitting there. My mom won't watch my practice session if Valentino Rossi's riding. So there's something to said about that. The fans love him, the people love him, the other riders love him. So I think he's great, and I think he should stay as long as he wants to ride. You know, I can't beat him. Can you beat him? Like, he's still fast, right?
Well, there's guys half his age that can't beat him on the same grid.
Yeah, that's it. So, you know, if he's still got the love, like, think about it. He has all the money in the world not to ride, but if he's still riding, obviously loves it. It's just like Tiger Woods in golf. Guy's been through so many back surgeries, yet he's still teeing it up, man. Those guys, they love what they're doing, and I give him a lot of kudos. I keep saying, okay, I'm going to retire when Valentino, because we're the same age, right? I'm like, oh, Valentino's going to retire. It means I can finally retire. And I'm like, oh, he's talking about keep going now. I got to keep going, you know, so.
All right, mate, well, we hope you do what you do best this weekend, and your passion keeps you going. You bring back in for a couple more years.
Oh, I love it. I hope to keep coming back with the team. Like I said, I grew up racing with Josh and Larry, and I'm one of the old guys, but we still love it. We still rip, and I'm glad to be here.
Good on you, mate. Good on you, Jordin Szoke.
Thank you.
Yeah, really nice guy. And that ice racing, I think Pete and Kev, you might be able to do something during the winter. Can we go up the Snowies and build an ice track and have a bit of an inaugural Australian ice racing championship?
Yeah, well, you see in Canada they do almost some stadium cross in the snow, so I think we could do a bit of that.
Well, we might have to, actually, with the way things are going. But here we've got a question. Pete, do you think we can get more officials to events after the restrictions have been lifted, particularly in road racing, which has been a bit of a good subject for the last couple of years, is getting officials there, Peter?
Yeah, look, it's always tough. You know, the volunteers. The volunteers are really the backbone of any sport when it comes to running an event. They're you go to a place like MotoGP and at Phillip Island, and your 600 volunteer officials are required to get through that event. So with the number of events that are running around the country and disciplines, we permit through Motorcycling Australia and all the state bodies, there's over 5,000 activities take place throughout the year. So yeah, it's a tough ask to get them there, but they're a pretty dedicated lot, and they genuinely love the sport, and we hope that they'll be hungry to come back to get back stuck into these events once we get going again.
Well, hopefully we can get some younger ones in there too, because the demographic's getting a bit on. To go and stand on a corner all day, you've got the best, whether it's motocross, speedway or road racing, whatever, you're in the best place in the, pardon me, at the track, except being on the bike.
Yeah, Braxy, when they're you'd fit the demographic pretty well, wouldn't you? I think we can get you out there on the flag.
Maybe if you don't want me commentating anymore, I might have to take it up to be close to the action.
But no, look, we've there as I said, it's not just motorcycle, it's all sports. Sport in Australia, around the world, is based on volunteers. Without them, you can't host the events. So it's an important part to ensure that we can get them all back in there when we get racing again.
Well, it's this year was shaping up, as we see on screen at the moment, some highlights from the first round at Phillip Island. You probably had the biggest field there in a number of years. Yes, we know Phillip Island drags a lot of people out of the woodwork to go and race, but the way this championship was shaping up, will it have any effect on the momentum, or do you think it's going to have the opposite effect, that people are going to be more hungry to get out there and have a look at these guys, which arguably are some of the best riders per talent anywhere in the world?
Yeah, look, it's a great unknown at the moment, isn't it? What are people going to do with this extended layoff? For access to racetracks. On the other hand, people like Honda have got a new bike, so they may use this downtime to do a lot more preparation work, and I'm sure some of the other teams are continue to try and develop. You know, you can only be hopeful that people want to get out there and racing, and that we might get bigger fields towards the end of the year because they've actually got something to do with it.
I think you might be right there. People are champing at the bit to go out there and racing. And thanks to asbk.com.au for supplying that footage as well. Every little bit helps. But Kev, with your angle too, for this year and next year, as a promoter, with the way the whole industry is, we know the Australian motorcycle industry is going to be through a bit of a decline lately. Is this going to have any effect on trying to attract sponsors because of the extended layoff and everything, or is it going to be the similar thing that it might have the reverse effect by making people more keen? And Pete, you can come into this if you want to when Kev's saying it as well.
Look, I think, Braxy, it's a tough ask. Right now, people all around Australia in business, whether it's sponsors in our industry, whether it's any industry, are looking at the moment, what disposables can I cut to make sure I keep my staff, my good people in a job? So it's really the unknown. How long is this going to take? You know, we want people to come back to the track. And I think as fans of the sport, one thing I would say to people is do your best to at least get to one event. The clubs are going to struggle. You know, we need people to come back and be a part of our sport. Don't be the Facebook warrior talking about there's not a crowd, there's not that. The reason there's not a crowd is because people stay at home. We all have to get behind the sport, whether it's as a volunteer or an official. I think one of the tough things coming out of this is going to be disposable incomes. You know, it's okay for all the team guys, but a lot of the privateers, whether it's in ASBK or in MX Nationals, you know, come from families that are in small business. They come from families who run their own business, and times are going to be tough. So we're going to have to work with that. I know in talking to the industry that they want to be there. They want to be a part of it. What that looks like financially for them at that time is going to be very hard to, you know, we're all fans of the sport. I think that people will be champing at the bit to get back to it. I hope that they can afford to come to it. You know, we're seeing so many stimuluses. Motocross, road racing, and our sport is going to need stimulus from spectators to come back and support the clubs, the promoters, and the sport. And so it's going to need stimulus in the volunteers. We're going to need to get them back to the track. It's going to be all of us in together on the front line to make sure that we come out the other side of this. What it looks like commercially, none of us have got any idea. It'll be, one thing I can say for sure is at least the next 12 months, it's going to be a different model. It'll be a new model. And I think I heard Jeff Kennett the other day talking about the AFL. One of the things that he said was out of adversity becomes opportunity. And, you know, the football clubs have probably grown too much fat over the years. And, you know, Peter and I have discussed this over the years. You know, it's great to see all the semis and all the infrastructure, but as a tightening of the belt comes, it may help keep it more affordable for everybody. So we've got to be in this together. We've got to work through it. We may see, you know, instead of a semi, 2 Sprinter vans. If that's what it's got to be for the next couple of years, then that's what it's got to be. We've just got to get back to the racetrack, no matter what racetrack it is.
Well, saying that too, and Peter, would there be, when you're saying about the privateers, the factory boy, well, in road racing we haven't got that many factory boys at the moment, but would there be any incentive and stimulus package to the privateers to lessen their entry fees or give them other incentives to try and get back? Because as we know, everybody's off work at the moment. Everyone's bleeding. Everybody's wondering what's happening tomorrow. Those poor buggers are getting on the dole queue that have never been out of work before. Is there any thoughts about that, about looking down the path that far that we may be able to, put that impetus and incentive into people that are coming back? And even the tyre companies with cheaper tyres or something, everybody chipping in to have a bit of a dip.
Yeah, look, and just to reinforce what Kev said, this is, you know, not just about ASBK or MX Nationals or any of the disciplines. This is about the entire motorcycle industry community and the racing community to come together to get through this period. So everything's on the table. We've obviously got to try and make it as affordable as possible to get as many people back out there, get people watching. I was living in the US when September 11th occurred, and we were actually we had the truck loaded, and most of our crew were on the way to Willow Springs for a race meeting. We had riders in the air, and having a look around today around Melbourne, it's sort of a little bit of a reminder of what took place in the US at that time. And the streets are empty. There's not many people wandering around. Very, very much reminds me of what took place back then. But back at that time in the US, there was 3 or 4 weeks there where it was dead. There was just nobody around, and you're in Los Angeles and there's nobody. And then something clicked overnight, and 7 days later there were cars everywhere with the American flags, and they were beating their chest and beating the drums as Americans do well, and blowing themselves up, and they all came alive again, and recommenced rebuilding after that big scare there. So hopefully we can do the same here in Australia.
Yeah, well, the guys like you in control. I know, Kev, you've been with the motocross for many, many years. You're involved with the Speedway, a few other things. Peter, coming into it from after you came back from America, I think with what you've been saying tonight, that whether hell or high water, that we'll get back to, well, not immediately, but we'll get back there in the near future as soon as these doors are opened again.
I think, as Kevin said, opportunity. We've got to look at the opportunities of when we start coming out the other side. What are the opportunities, and we need to grab hold of those opportunities and run with them. And it's going to take a while. I mean, Kevin said before, looking at the Doyle queue and the amount of layoffs that are going on, the airline industry, the hospitality industry, I mean, they're upside down at the moment. Unemployment's skyrocketing. It's going to go, it'll be between 10 and 20%. We could end up like Spain was a few years back. So at the moment, we've got to look at what opportunities we've got, grab hold of them and run with them, and try and get the sport back on track. And
Kev, you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, look, I just think, one of the great things about our sport, Braxy, the three of us have all known each other for many, many years, and you build camaraderie and pep. One of the things we heard the Prime Minister say the other day was we need some Anzac spirit. My call to everybody in this industry, everybody that's a rider, an official or a marshal, is understand we've had wars and we sent people away. Today the war's at our front door. We are the front line, and our actions over the next month, 2, 3, 4 months will determine the success of the challenges ahead. Take the BRAT principle, be responsible, and always adhere to the advice, please. We'll be back racing, but we are the front line. We've got a young demographic. We can send a strong message. We go and see a rider fall at a race meeting, we all want to support him. Somebody has a part missing, the pits get behind them. Let's all to get together as a sport. We are an amazing sport, an amazing community, and we can assist in this process by doing the right thing, and that will get us all back to the racetrack sooner. Thanks so much for your time, Braxy. Pleasure, Doyle. I want to go back racing. I want to get 9 rounds of championship in. Whatever, as Peter said times, everything's on the table, nothing's off the table, and, everybody's good input is welcome.
All right, guys, thanks. Peter Doyle and Kevin Williams, thanks very much for your time. It's been good to get from the coalface, so to speak, about what's happening, and hopefully anybody on social media can still talk about it, but keep it in positive light. And again, thank you again for joining us on Let's Talk Motorsport, and all the best in the next couple of months, which is going to be very challenging for all involved. But thanks again for joining us here tonight on Let's Talk Motorsport, and let's not make it the last time. When we get back on deck, we can talk about what we've been through and the positive that's going to happen for 2020 and beyond. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Braxy. Anytime.
No worries. Thanks. Thanks for coming. And that's... Well, I suppose we can't get any more than that. I hope you've enjoyed what we've said there, or what these guys have said, Peter Doyle and Kevin Williams. They're the guys at the coalface. Peter Doyle, especially with a motorcycle in Australia, he's got a dedicated staff there that have probably been burning the midnight oil trying to get things done and almost beating their head against a brick wall, knowing that whatever they do, the goalposts are going to change in a couple of days, a couple of hours, a couple of seconds. It's been getting onto that. But here at Let's Talk Motorsport, we're going to be continuing to support these guys. We'll try and inform you of everything that's been going on and will be going on. Like there's a virtual GP this weekend on 29th of March, MotoGP are putting in a virtual GP. So hopefully, maybe, who knows, we might be able to get a virtual Aussie Superbike round one at Phillip Island, because we know that's on PlayStation. We can get a few guys to play with it. But again, thanks to the guys for turning up. And let's charge it up a bit and have a little bit look back in history of some of the bikes that are still getting around. The RC30s, there was only a couple of them a few years ago racing in Australia. Now there's about 10 or 11. So let's go back in time again to the Island Classic when there was some racing and have a look and a chat with the guys that were racing these immaculate and unobtainable virtually RC30s. Well, here we are at the 27th International Island Classic at Phillip Island, and a very special get-together. It's like a corroboree of RC30s, a very iconic motorcycle of the 80s and early 90s, and probably the biggest collection we've seen all in one group for quite some years, until those halcyon days back in, like I said, the late 80s and early 90s. But we've got a few guys here that are out here. They're all coming together. They're sourcing these bikes from all around the world. So let's go and have a chat and see what makes this bike so popular. Come with us. We'll go first to the man that's probably responsible for a lot of this love affair with RC30s. Man who's synonymous with Australian superbike racing, Malcolm Wally Campbell. Mate, I was just saying you might be responsible for this because of the antics that we saw with you guys back there in the late 80s and early 90s on these machines, and turn them into something iconic.
Well, the history of RC30 is pretty interesting in itself, really. When they first came out, we had trouble with them, engine trouble. A lot of the HRC parts had never been tested, and the project went back to where the bike was built, back to R&D in the factory. And they helped me a lot here in Australia, and we tested a lot of parts, and we become very successful, the bike itself and most of the teams that were running them.
So when you jumped on these things for the first time, they were a bit of a ground being the V4 and everything. What was your first impressions of them? Can you remember back that far, like with what it was?
From what we were riding, they were a tiny motorbike, very, very small and practical for racing, very similar to the RVFs that we'd raced at Suzuki 8 Hour, etc. So they're a derivative from that, first cousin, I guess. And a lot of the stuff from that was copied, and yeah, they were race built, ready to go, pretty much.
And they were unobtainium back then, weren't they?
They were obtainable. It'd cost you $14,500 over the counter. You could get one. There were limited numbers, and today you can get upward of $100,000 for them. So there you go.
Well, there's a few $100,000 worth of machines sitting here, and these led on to other versions of the V4 too, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they went on to the RC45 after the RC30 at World Superbike level again. They were probably a rarer bike than what the RC30 was in a lot of ways. And, they got success in the end, but they really had to work at it against Ducati.
And are you surprised about all these ones coming together? They seem to be coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, they are. They're breeding, aren't they? Out the back somewhere, probably Clive Wolverton's workshop, I reckon. He seems to look after a lot of them and make a lot of parts for them, which is great to keep them all on the track and out there. And the things aren't slow. They're still good, fast motorbikes.
Well, we've seen that with you and battling with your son Scotty over the years, and it's funny, only a few years ago we only saw you two on the grid with them. Now we're going to have 5, 6, 7 or 8 of them on the grid.
Yeah, it's becoming a problem. They're all giving me a hard time, that's the trouble, especially my son, Sir Scott. So, I've had to follow him around in recent years, so we'll be doing that again on Saturday, Sunday, I guess, unless...
You'll have to get him to overtake on a yellow flag.
I don't know what I can... He jump-started one year and got a 10-second penalty. That was a fair bit of help to me, but we don't want to see that. But, the racing's been good, close and clean. So, really good.
And good to see you still out here. Well, that's the main thing.
Yeah, I'm tired, but I'm not retired.
Exactly right, mate. Well done. As we move on to where is Nathan gone? Nathan Spiteri, you probably could have bought a house for what you paid for this one, didn't you? Did you go through a divorce when you brought this home instead of a contract for a house?
Yeah, not quite. It was actually my 40th birthday present to myself.
So what's been, like, while he raced these things way back then, what has been the attraction and the passion for you to get an RC30?
I rode Hondas for years, Honda Superbikes, and I used to take my bike down to Clyde, Wolfen and CNC Engineering, and I just used to look at basically those two bikes that were always there, and drool over them. And then Clyde started building this, and I said, "Oh, is this my one? Is it?" Jokingly, and pretty much every time I turned up, I said, "How's my bike going?" And as it sort of got towards the end of it, I said, "Well, how much you want?" And that was it. I just had to have it, Brexy, like, and since having it, it's like you fall in love with them, and then all of a sudden you're part of this community, like throughout the world, where if you need a part or you're looking for something, there's always someone willing to help, and there's a big passion for these bikes out there.
Oh, there certainly is. And what was it like when you first jumped on it for the first time? Was it everything you expected?
They're pretty amazing to ride. Like, the chassis is just...
Why? What makes them so...
Just the way they turn, the way they rev for like a 30-year-old motorcycle is just, for me, like I was only a little boy when they came out, and I can't believe, like, they would have just... No wonder they dominated. They just feel so fast. And like I describe it like a modern 600 with obviously not as good of brakes, but everything else feels really fast, and deceivingly fast. It's not like it's not like it's ripping your arms out of your sockets. It's just accelerating the whole time. You're going, oh, give it another gear, and before you know it, you're zinging along, and it's just a real sweet thing to ride,
All right, we look forward to seeing you out there on the weekend, busting it with these guys. As I go and have a quick word with Scotty Campbell, the generation that keeps his old man on it. Scotty, you keep coming back for one more of this too, don't you?
Yeah, I don't know why. No, I do. I do really enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, these two are special motorcycles too, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. And these were part of the race team back in the day. The engines hasn't got the engines in them that they did back then, but they still go really well. They don't feel that old to ride though, and probably the biggest advantage with these bikes over the rest of the bikes of the period is their corner speed. You can just carry so much more corner speed than what the Suzukis. They got plenty of ground clearance, so they don't scrape the cases or anything like that. So yeah, but keep going around one more time. I'm 41 next week, so...
Don't let that hold you back.
Got a few more times to go yet, I think. But I bought another race bike that I've been doing a little bit of club racing down home on this year, so it sort of help keep myself a bit fitter and up to speed for this sort of thing. So, yeah, no, really enjoy it, that's for sure.
Well, it must be a big buzz to you. You're racing the old man on bikes that the old man made a name on.
Yeah, and that's right, and it's certainly, that's part of the reason, I guess. Like, probably the Period 5 bikes I don't really have a lot of interest in because they're not the bikes that were racing when I was growing up, whereas these were the ones that I watched get raced mostly, I guess. So it's all in your generation. It's like all the car racing and everything as well. So yeah, no, it's a thrill to have watched these races so long and get to race them. Yeah, that's for sure.
All right, we'll be seeing you on the weekend, no doubt, mate.
No worries.
Watch them yellow flags and jump starts.
Yeah, that's right. Cheers. Thanks, mate.
No worries, you move along and get a couple more enthusiasts that bought these things, and there's actually a couple of them for sale. So if you've got a few coins in your pocket, Rick Johnson trying to get, well, he does sponsor the New Era 750 and 1300, so better give him a bit. John, your machine here, pristine. It looks like it's just come from the Suzuki 8 Hour.
It's a replica of the 88 Saron Gardner winning. That's the decal kit you can get for it. So I wanted something unique and different with a bit of history. That's the way I went. So it's been down the road before, so it's actually just been rebuilt. So yeah, it's got to keep it upright.
So where did you source this one from?
This was out of Brisbane, and then I sent it straight to CNC Engineering, to Clyde, who looks after these two machines.
Yep.
And we did the motor, sorted out the airbox, carburation, valving in the suspension, and probably 4 months later, he sent it on to me. It's a dream to ride. Beautiful.
So is this one of a bike that's been on the bucket list for you?
Oh, absolutely. But when you get to my age, you can only afford it then.
Yeah, well, as Wally said, they were 14,500 when they come off the showroom, which back then was a lot of money as well. So I'm not going to ask you how much you paid for it, but was it worth the investment?
Oh, absolutely. Because they will retain their value, and they are unique. They're an icon. So for me, yeah, it's a keep and hand on to my son.
All right, well, I suppose have you let him have a steer of it yet?
Not yet. Not yet. Dad's got to finish with it.
All right, mate. John, take it easy, and we'll see you on the track as well. But Phil Burke, you have got a few of them. You've got what makes the attraction for you that you keep wanting another one in the shed?
Well, I didn't really want this many. I only really wanted one. But, you know, when you say to people, oh, I wouldn't mind buying an RC30, do you know when there's any about? And all of a sudden they keep popping up and you think, oh, yeah. And the last one I bought was actually the next Japanese Superbike Championship from the 90s, and I thought that was too good to miss, so that's why I've ended up with so many. Trying to sell a few at the moment, so I need to recoup a bit of money back into the bank. But they're just something that I've always wanted. I first saw one in about 1988, and I thought that is the most beautiful piece of machinery that I've ever seen, and I still think they're beautiful.
And what do they like to ride? Like Wally, we heard Scott say he loves the corner speed of the machine. You can't believe how much corner speed. Nathan Spiteri said they're like a 600 but without the modern day brakes. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, yeah, they are. They're amazing. For something that was built in the late 80s, they are amazing. Like you just, you know, look where you want to go and off it goes. I've ridden a lot of different bikes over the year, and as far as actually handling goes, you know, including some modern bikes, R6s and Ducatis and stuff, this is up there. It is a beautiful geometry piece of machinery.
And it hasn't lost anything in the horsepower stakes over the years?
Well, it has, yeah. Look, you know, a good one of these makes about as much horsepower as what an R6 does, a modern day R6. So, you know, they're not slow, but they're not really quick either.
What's the maintenance like on them?
Oh, don't know. I've got one with a pretty bad oil leak at the moment. I'll let you know. But look, all right.
As long as it's an oil leak from a seam and not a hole.
Yeah, there's no holes. No. So I did. That's the first time I've actually had it out, and I did a couple of laps. And I looked down at my boots, and there was no oil on them. I thought this is pretty good. And then when I came in, there was a bit of oil lying around. So yeah, well, but they are something remarkable. You know, even in this day and age, they to me they still look great.
I'll put a for sale sign on. We'll get a shot of it. Maybe help you get rid of them on Let's Talk Motorsport. But thanks for coming along and joining the lineup.
Thanks very much, Brexy.
No worries, mate. And that's what makes the International Island Classic so special. You get machines like this coming out of the woodwork. People are sourcing them, but they're on the bucket list. They're on the bucket list. They get them and they come racing with them. And that's what these things are meant for. And it's so good to see them on track. So it's good to be part of here at the International Island Classic to see all this together. When you say how much they're worth, it's probably looking at the best part of $500,000 to probably 600,000, 700,000 bucks worth of Honda RC30s here. Keep it on your bucket list, International Island Classic.
Yeah, it was a great weekend, that one, and unfortunately a couple of them could have been on show last weekend at Eastern Creek when the Festival of Speed was supposed to be on another motorsport event that's gone to the wayside because of this atrocious virus that's afflicted the world at the moment. But great to see those guys out there, and again thanks to Kev Williams and Peter Doyle from MA and MX Nationals and everything. There's a lot of things we could have talked about. There probably will be in the next few weeks to talk about with what's going on. It's pretty trying times. We're running out of time a bit at the moment, so we're going to drop the Dave Johnson interview again tonight because, well, now that we're going on to other platforms with starting tomorrow night and Saturday night on other platforms on free-to-air and cable television. We've got to keep a bit of a tight rein on it at the moment, but the one good thing about Davo Johnson is you could listen to it in 5 years' time and it'd still be pretty prudent, and he is a bit of a character. But now, before we close up tonight, we've got another thing we want to get into. We've been looking at those old classic bikes. We know there's a lot of classic cars, bikes, go-karts, all sorts of machinery hidden in your shed. So we're putting it out there. We want to show us what you got, basically. And to give you a bit of an idea about what we're looking for, the executive producer of this, Phil Harris, who found his niche in River to Reef for many years before he decided to throw me to the wolves and put me on a live streaming show here in the Let's Talk Motorsport studio, he's got a little bit of a bike. So if you've got a bike, a car, a kart, anything like that that's mechanical that you get out and ride and race, or it's just one of those things that's too valuable for you to race and it's your pride and joy, let's hear about it on Show Us What You Got. So here's a quick preview, pardon me, of what we'd like you to submit to us at Let's Talk Motorsport.
Now this bike, people have said to me, why did you build a two-stroke? Well, the reason I did it is, in 1976, I was lucky enough to be a corner marshal with an arm in a sling, broken arm, at the 1976 Laverton International event. And at that meeting, I saw for the first time Pat Hennon ride one of these machines. I just loved the look of the bike, and over the past years of my racing career, which was in the 70s, early 80s, I actually did build a modified version of a GT750 Suzuki. I had a lot of problems with it, of course. I had no money, like a lot of people back in the 70s. But just the same, I had a bit of fun with it too. Anyway, work got in the way over all those years and racing went aside. I did a bit of sailing and other things for recreation. I got out of racing altogether. And then, because I was working 7 days a week and decided that no longer I'm going to do that, my wife said, why don't you do something else? Because I was getting under her feet around the house. And so she said, why don't you build a bike? And I thought, well, why don't I build a bike? So I decided to do a lot of research and have found that a lot of the parts for these you can actually buy now. People over the years have actually gathered genuine TR750s and have remanufactured a lot of the parts that were unobtainable back then. Things like, you know, magnesium ignition covers, the close ratio gearboxes, all sorts of bits and pieces. So I set about putting a list together of what I needed, and I fortunately have the engineering skills to do a lot of this sort of stuff. Some stuff I hadn't done before, like TIG welding, for example. So I bought a TIG welder and taught myself some basic aluminium TIG welding. But a lot of parts I manufactured. So this bike is it's a CMR frame and swing arm, so they're chrome moly. The engine was a GT750 engine, which I bought from a friend of mine. It was under his workbench. I paid him $500 for the engine, and then set about modifying that engine, because all the GT750s or TR750s back then were modified GT750 water bottle engines, and there were a lot of modifications. So from front to back, what we've got is a set of FJ1100 forks, modified, with Nitron cartridges in them so I can adjust the compression and rebound, spring loadings and all sort of stuff. We've got Brembo F08 calipers on the front. We've got Diamag magnesium wheels, front and rear. We have got a dry clutch, and that was hard to get hold of. So I found a guy in New Zealand who had made a few, and ended up buying one from him. We've got a close ratio 5-speed Nova gearbox in this bike. I've modified the inlet tract extensively, and we're now running VM 38mm PowerJet carburetors, running a HPI CDI ignition system, which is programmable. What else have we got here? The pipes, Swarbrick in the UK. In my research, I found that they actually made a pipe that actually suited these machines. They're a very straight pipe. There's not a big fat section in the middle, but that is represented in the power band of this bike. It pulls like a train from about 4,000 to about 8. We're 113 horsepower on the dyno. That was DeWitt Motorsport. Mick has helped us out a lot with this bike, particularly with his knowledge of two-strokes and engines in general, and also his time on the dyno, so I really appreciate that, Mick. Fiberglass, I was able to buy that from a guy called Ragged Edge Racing in the UK, and then my mate Clive Carter made a replica and ended up making a two-piece fairing out of that, because the original one had a belly pan on the bottom. We're an aluminium fuel tank. The bike's been raced at the Festival of Speed in Sydney the last few years by Danny Carter, and also down at Phillip Island. We did have a lot of teething problems originally with this bike, and then I found it was an ignition problem that was causing one cylinder to detonate like crazy and destroyed pistons, crankshafts and all that sort of stuff. That was, you know, one of the learning curves of building a bike. Its weight, it's 2 kilograms heavier than a factory machine, and that's because we just don't have as much magnesium on this bike as they did back then. For example, our carb is aluminium, theirs were magnesium. Our clutch housing is aluminium, theirs was magnesium. Crankshaft is pretty much a standard GT750 crankshaft, modified slightly on the ends for the various ignition rotors and the alternator side cut off. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's my TR750 replica.
Well, there you go. Phil showed us what he's got. Can you show us what you've got? We're more than happy, especially in this time of world history, I suppose it's going to go down in when everybody's in lockdown. It'll give you a good chance to get out to your shed, perv on your machinery, and give us a chance to perv on your machinery. So if you think you can put something together like Phil did, no, it doesn't have to be that good, but just a bit of a story. It doesn't have to be that long either. But if you're interested in, you know, showing us your pride and joy and what gets your jollies, what you've raced or what you used to race or what you'd like to race, I know there's a lot of bikes out there. I know there's a lot of passion out there. Let's see what you've got. Bring it on a Let's Talk Motorsport and show the world why we all like motorsport, whether it's the cars, the bikes or the go-karts. We want to hear your story as well. So that brings us to an end of episode number 7. Hopefully it's been enlightening for you. We've gone basically to the top notch to get the words of wisdom from the powers that be in this motorcycle racing in Australia. Thanks to Kevin Williams from MX Nationals and Peter Doyle, the CEO of Motorcycling Australia, for coming on and discussing this very, very critical time in a lot of people's lives. Before we go, I'd like to, out there, thanks for inviting us into your lounge rooms and devices, wherever you may be watching. And during this time, stay safe, look after each other. Remember, we're all going to get through this eventually. It's not going to be the end of the world, even though some are thinking it is. But let's be strong. Let's take notice of what the government's saying. Keep indoors. I think this is the last time that I'll be doing this show from these studios for quite some time. Hopefully it's only a couple of weeks, but I reckon from the next few weeks I'll be doing it from home and then getting guests in as had tonight with Kev and Peter. So until we can meet again and I can get people in the studio here with me, let's stay strong with this. Keep focused, keep positive, keep a smile on your face, try and make others smile. And until next time, I'm Mark Brax. See you next week from home on Let's Talk Motorsport. Thanks for joining us.